What's up YouTube? This is Dennis Panuta for tutorials.eu. In this video you are going to learn how to click to move in Unity. So you're going to learn how to basically click onto somewhere in your game and the player will then move to that direction, and you will also see how the camera will follow the player to that direction, and we're going to use NavMesh for that, for moving the player, and you will also see how he actually avoids obstacles along the way and just takes the best path. So it's kind of a path finding as well that is going to be applied here. All right, so let's get started. As always, if you like to read along, you can check out the link in the description where you will find this article, which is a step-by-step guide and also has the code. So if you're too lazy to actually type out the code, you can also go here and just copy the code to your projects and use it there. So let's get started. I'm going to use 3D for my project, and I'm going to call this one click to move. So this is Unity 2020. So if I want to use any additional resources or packages, I have to get them from the web, and then I can basically install it via the package manager. And the assets that we're going to use are the Toon Gas station. So you definitely should get that for your application. You can open it in the Unity editor, and then you can see the package manager opens up, at least in my case, and then you can select this Toon Gas station, which is exactly what we're going to use, and then you can download it if you haven't yet, and you can import it once you have downloaded it, and click import once again. And then we're going to use this other package, which is the Toon characters. So here, Toon Tiny People demo. It's also a free assets package, and you can just go ahead and add that to your library and then open it in Unity. So I'm just going to open it directly here in Unity, download the package, and then import it to my project and import. So now let's go to Toon Gas Station and Scenes, and then you will find the demo scene 1. Let's go to the scene, and you can see this is the gas station that we have now, and I think it is a very nice package to test around in because there are a bunch of beautiful little elements, and I think it looks quite cool to just get some points across, especially moving and all of the good stuff. Okay, so once you're here, you can also add characters to the scene. So you can just go to your assets and to Tiny People, TT Demo, and there you will find prefabs, and these are the different characters that you have. So you could just drag any of them in, the zombie, the police officer, the male, female, whatever you want. I'm just gonna drag the male character in here, and then I'm going to rename it to player. So this will be my player now. I will also scale the character up a little bit. So I'm going to use 1.3, 1.3, 1.3 towards all directions. Now the next thing that we need to set up is the navigation agent, because our game needs to know where it can walk and where it can't walk. So for example, it can't walk where a tree is in the way, but it can walk all the way around the tree, and the same goes for all of those lights and all of those elements that basically are in the way where the character cannot walk past and walk over. And I can then add the functionality to click somewhere on the map, and the character will move there and will find the best possible route to get there, or best possible direction and way to go there. Now at this point you can go to Window, AI, Navigation. Once you're in Navigation, go to Object and make sure that you set the navigation to static. And as you see, even though I set that to all, well, I have selected terrain before. Now it's just showing this to, or for me, for this terrain. But if I want to do the same thing with the pavement, for example, you can see, let me go to the pavement here, and it will show me all of the elements that are here, that are available, and I want to make all of them static. So I'm going to make changes to all of them, to all mesh renderers in my project. So you can see it has selected all of the mesh renderers in this scene, and then I can go ahead and double check if navigation static is set to true, and then I go to bake here and click bake. Then it will bake this whole scene, and as you can see now we have the NavMesh renderer. You can see that, and now we have NavMesh in our game, and you can see all of these blue areas are areas we can walk on, and everything that is not blue we cannot walk on. So for example, in this gray area I cannot walk because the car is in the way. Okay, so that's basically how our scene is now walkable on. So we can now walk on it, even though of course we still need to add all of the relevant scripts that will allow us to walk, and I think this is what you're most interested in. But it's important that you bake your scene so that you can walk on areas. By the way, if you like what you're learning and you would like to know a lot more about Unity and build a bunch of games along the way while learning to develop in Unity, well, then check out my complete Unity course. You can find the link in the description. You are going to learn how to create a zigzag clone with a procedurally created map, how to create a Fruit Ninja clone, how to build a construction game where you can just build your own city from scratch. You can see here you have even loading and saving of the game. Then you're going to see how to create a Minesweeper clone, as well as a Bit Blaster clone, and a bunch more. So I hope to see you in this course. Check out the link in the description to get a discount. And by the way, these areas are grayed out. It's because our agent radius is set to 0.5. If I set it to 0.1 and I bake once again, then after it's done baking, and this takes a little while, but then you will see that the gray areas around it are significantly smaller, and even surrounding these posts. So now we can walk almost inside of those posts or into those posts. So that's what this agent radius does, and I'm just going to set that back to 5 or 0.5 because that's the default value, and I'm fine with that, and it was significantly faster to bake it this way. All right, so now the next step is to add raycasting and the NavMesh agent to our player. Okay, so therefore I'm going to go to my player, and here in the inspector I'm going to add a component which is called NavMesh agent. So it's this one here, and you can see that you have multiple different agent types that you can set up. We have the humanoid as default, and that's the only one that I have set up. Then I'm going to basically leave the default, so no changes are necessary here, because this is going to be good enough for us or for our player to walk. You can see there is some pathfinding in it, and it's pretty cool because it will auto repath. It will do pathfinding for us, which is pretty nice. So it will take the shortest path and move the character to its destination. So now we need to create a new C# script. Okay, so let's go to assets, and of course you can go ahead and create a new folder for this. So I'm going to call this one scripts, and inside of it I'm going to create a new script which I'm going to call character movement script, because that's what it's going to take care of the character movement. Now at this point you need to add this header, so basically this namespace here called Unity engine.ai for this to work, and I'm going to use the NavMesh agent. So we need to have the NavMesh agent for navigation mesh usage, because that's the component that we just had, and we're going to use it in order to see if we have reached the goal or if we're still walking. And then I'm going to replace the update method with my own one, and you can see here I'm going to get the mouse button, which is the left mouse button, and then I'm going to use raycast here. So screen point to ray. What that basically does is it will get the mouse position, so wherever we clicked on, it will get that position, and it will see where does it relate to in the map. So for example, if I click here, then it will see where did I click on the map or in the game. So at this point, for example, it will need to know where's my mouse, and then it will need to know where is the mouse in relation to the game. So for example, it should be this part of the asphalt, for example, or if I go to the gas station. If I click here, then it should know that it's inside of this gas station and not somewhere else in this world. Okay, so that's what this screen point to ray will basically give us in a ray format. And then we need to raycast hit. So basically, where did we hit it? Okay, so first of all, we get the ray with the position of the player, and then we use physics.raycast to use that ray that we just created based on the mouse position and the screen point to ray, and we're going to give an output of raycast hit. And this will then allow us to set the destination of our player NavMesh agent. So it's basically this NavMesh agent that we will need to assign to our script, and this set destination, it needs to know where it needs to go. And this my raycast hit dot point will give it a specific position. So basically, raycast hit dot point is the impact point in world space where the ray hit the collider. Okay, so you need to have colliders there, and that's the cool thing, because we have colliders, right? So this street here, for example, this asphalt has this mesh collider. So depending on where my mouse hit a collider, that's where this raycast hit will be. So now at this point, we can already test the script. And by the way, we do that in the update method. So it will run every single frame, and it will update depending on where we click afterwards. So it will always update it with the latest click that we did, so to speak. So it's not going to finish walking to the point where it was, and then it will go to the next click that we did, but it will always update it based on the click that we did last. All right, so at this point, we need to go to our player and make sure that we add the script to this player. So I'm just going to drag this current movement script to the player. And by the way, it seems like I dragged those variables a little bit too far up in my script. So now after correcting that, we can go back to Unity and the error should disappear. And after a little while, you will be able to assign a player NavMesh agent as well as a player camera. Okay, so let's drag that NavMesh agent in here. We can do that directly from here, or you could also drag the player from over there from your hierarchy here. It will pretty much do the same thing. And then we need to have the player camera. So we can just use the main camera for this and drag it over here, because what we want to later on happen is that we can follow the player. Okay, so let's see what happens once we run this game. And you can see I'm clicking and the player character is actually moving where I'm clicking. So now at this point you could say, wow, the camera is a little too far off, it's too high. So what we can do is we can change the position of the camera. So I'm going to try and zoom in a little bit for us to see the player in a slightly better manner. So I think something like that will be good enough. At least for now. We can later on, as I said, add a script that will follow the player. But now what we're missing is an animation. So he's sliding on top of this world, which is pretty cool. And as you can see, he cannot walk through the post. And he can also not walk through this tree. So he's trying to walk past the tree. So you can see he basically finds the best route to get there. Okay. So now let's add animations to our game, and I'm just going to go ahead and create an Animator controller, and I'm going to call this one Player Anim Controller. And now you can open it up and you can go to your Toon Tiny People, then to Animation, Mail, and here you find a bunch of different animations that the player has, and I'm just going to use this mRun. So I'm going to drag it in. This will be the entry point. You can see it goes there directly, so maybe run is the wrong one. Let's use idle first, then the entry will directly go to idle. So if we don't do anything, the character will do the idle animation. And then what we want to do is we want to be able to run, so I'm going to add run here as well. So the entry point will be idle, and then if a certain parameter is true, then we want the player to use the run animation. Okay, so how can we actually make this transition? Well, basically I can add a transition from idle to run and from run to idle. So once we don't run anymore, we want the player to be idle again and just do the idle animation. Now for the transitions to work, what we need is a parameter. So here you need to go to parameters, not layers, but parameters. Click on this plus here and then select bool. And you can add this bool is running, for example. Okay, so this will then indicate whether the player is running or not. And here what we need to do is a little change. So you can deactivate has exit time. What that will do is it will basically just have a very quick transition from one animation to the other. So there will be no exit time of the idle animation, even though you can leave it in there, and that will look a little smoother. But if you want to have the super quick reaction, then you would deactivate it. So you can just test both of it. And then you need to have a condition, because otherwise it won't work. So this transition from idle to run, which is this blue one because it's marked and active right now, this transition will activate when is running is set to true. And the other way around, we also need to add a condition, and that will be active if the is running is set to false. So here we can basically now start this animation quite easily. Now that we have this animator, we need to make sure that we are using this animator code, and well, we use this animator in the code to be precise. So I can just go ahead and add an animator here. So public animator player animator, and I need this boolean which will be storing the value whether we're running or not. Okay, and then what we need to check is the player currently running or not, and we will do that inside of our update method. Okay, so here after we've done this click here, so not inside of this if statement, but afterwards we are checking player nav mesh agent dot remaining distance, is it less than player nav mesh agent dot stopping distance. So stopping distance is the distance at which the player will stop moving because it reached the goal, so to speak. And the cool thing is we get that from our player nav mesh agent, so we don't even need to do any kind of calculations ourselves. This is what Unity provides us with, and this makes it significantly easier. So then we have this if block here, and then if that is the case, so if we reached the final destination, the is running variable will be set to false, and otherwise it will be set to true. So if we are actually moving towards something, or the player is moving towards something, then is running will be true, otherwise it will be false. And then what's important is that we now set player animator dot set bool, and we call it is running to is running. So what is that supposed to mean? Well, let's look at Unity once again. So I have this boolean here, and now by code I'm setting it to whatever the is running value of my code is. So here I'm just saying is running is going to be the is running value that we get from here. So basically, if we're running, we set the boolean to running. If we're not running, we're setting it to is not running, or actually it's just a true or false value, but that's how you could imagine it. Okay, at this point we can save the script and go back to our game and test it once again and see whether our player is actually creating any kind of animation or having any kind of animation when moving. And of course we forgot to add the player animator, so I can just drag this player animator in there. And then once we drag the animator in here, we also need to make sure that our animator has a controller. So we have this player anim controller, and I need to assign that to my animator of the player. Okay, and now at this point we can test it, and you can see it doesn't, and then it starts doing them. Okay, so now it starts the animation. And why is that? Well, that has to do with this has exit time. Okay, so let's look at our player anim controller once again. and I'm going to deactivate this has exit time because it always takes a while until this animation is fully done, because you can see this idle animation takes full 4 seconds. So this is the time that you can see here at the top. It takes forever for it to finish, and only once it's finished then we can see any change. So now you can see this is the idle animation. The player is actually moving, so to speak, so his club is going up and down and he's breathing. And now once I start running, you can see the player is running towards the mouse click, even though the turning around seems a little weird, but overall you can see now you have a player that is actually running for you. And you can just click on the screen where you want the player to run, and that's where he's running. And by the way, once he stops running, you can see he goes back to the idle animation and he stops doing the running animation. Check, it's done. There we are. The idle animation where he moves the club again. By the way, if you want the camera to follow the player, you can quite easily also add a script here. As you can see, well, it's expecting a script, but it doesn't have one. So we can go to scripts and create a new C# script, camera follow player script. So I'm going to call it, pretty long name, but that's what it does. And then you can just go ahead and basically run this code here. Okay, so we need to know the target that we're following, which is the transform, so which is the position of the target, in this case the player. Then we have a speed with which we are following, a vector 3, which is the offset, so basically the distance between the player and the camera. And on start we set the offset, which basically is the position of the target, which is our player, and the position of the camera. And then in fixed update, well, actually we should do it in late update once all of the other update calls are done. So for example, the iteration of the update method as well as the fixed update methods are done, then we can do the late update call. And if we have a follow target, then we want to change the position of our camera, so this transform position, to the position of the target that we're following minus the offset. So minus the distance that we had to the player at the start of running the script. Okay, so now that we have the script, I can go to main camera and I can actually assign this camera follow script to it. So here at the bottom, assign it. You need a follow target now. I'm just going to say, okay, follow the player. Follow speed should be 5. And now let's run it again and see how we are actually doing. And you can see our mouse is following, or actually our player is following the mouse and the camera is following the player. Now you could of course change the position of the player or of the camera in comparison. You can also see he's not running through this car. So if I click just behind the car, you can see he was running around the car, and that's perfect. So I would say this is a pretty cool little game that we have built here. Now, of course, we need to add objectives. We need to add a bunch of tea that we can collect and all of the good stuff. All right, so I hope you enjoyed this video. If you did, then please leave a like and also make sure to check out one of those videos. And while you're at it, definitely hit that subscribe button so that you get all of the good stuff that we're uploading. And as you see, we really give our best to give you good content. All right, so see you in the next video.